Oh, man, it's a great opportunity. The Bill Walsh Coaching Mentor Program. This year for training camp, I'll be joining the Los Angeles Chargers.
For sure.
When I'm out there, I'm going to be strictly thinking about just being a coach, no podcasting.
Delanie Walker is yet another former NFL player that has been added to this Chargers coaching staff this season under Jim Harbaugh. But Delanie Walker, he's a little bit different though, because all of these other coaches, they are full-time coaches for the Chargers this season, like Nick Hardwick, Navarro Bowman, Will Tukuafu. But Delanie Walker, he is joining the Chargers coaching staff through the Bill Walsh Diversity Coaching Fellowship, and there is still potential that he could remain on this staff long term. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think this is a great pairing, and let's get into this full breakdown here on why I love this move and what the future could possibly be with Delanie Walker on this coaching staff, because there's a real possibility that he could be a full-time coach this season. First of all, the Bill Walsh program, it doesn't mandate any rules for how to hire and implement these coaches through their program for the NFL teams, but we can assume pretty safely, I think, that Delanie Walker is going to be on this staff helping out through training camp and through the preseason. But then once we get into the regular season, that's when we're going to see whether he is on this team full time. And I hope that he is, because, bro, as a player, this is a guy that I was watching growing up. Delanie Walker, he was an absolute dog, and he was really like an underdog, a guy that not a lot of people really knew his name throughout like his entire career, maybe until he went into Tennessee. That's when he really kind of broke out. But the rundown on him, he was a tough an athletic tight end that had a grinder mindset, and that fits exactly what Jim Harbaugh is creating with the Chargers. He went to Pomona High School, which is not really far from LA. Actually, that's still in LA County. That's like an hour and a half east. But he went the JUCO route at first in college, was ranked as the 7th best player in 2003. Later transferred to the University of Central Missouri, played wide receiver for them for 2 seasons, where he had 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns, while also being a kick returner for them at times. And he actually had 3 kick return touchdowns. Keep that in mind for later. And that is tied for the school record there. He was then drafted by the 49ers in 2006 in the 6th round. Did not really see much action until Jim Harbaugh came around later on. It is worth noting, though, and a very fun fact as well, because in 2008, he had a 101-yard kick return touchdown, but it was in the preseason. It was week 4 of the preseason, and I'm pretty sure that he is actually the only tight end in NFL history that has a kick return touchdown. It did come in the preseason, but, you know, this guy, point is, he's a very versatile player, as we are going to get into here. Like Jim Harbaugh, he came around in 2011. That was Delanie Walker's 6th season. And up until that point in his career, he really had not done much in the NFL. He had less than 1,000 yards receiving throughout his career, only 2 touchdowns, and had played some snaps at fullback, but really mostly at tight end for the 49ers. But in 2011, Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, they came in and they both identified Delanie Walker as the Swiss Army knife on their offense, but also really just kind of like on the team in general, because they lined him up everywhere. He lined up at wide receiver, fullback, running back, right tackle, tight end, obviously, and he was a kick returner and a gunner on special teams. He was also able to see a lot of playing time, even though the 49ers, they already had a great tight end ahead of him in Vernon Davis. And Delanie Walker, he was a part of that 49ers team that had guys like Navarro Bowman and Will Tukuafu, who are both now full-time coaches with the Chargers already. And Navarro Bowman, he was an extremely physical and Pro Bowl linebacker, while Will Tukuafu was a very versatile defensive lineman and fullback kind of hybrid role. Delanie Walker, it's really interesting because he's sort of like the in-between of those two guys. You know, he was a Pro Bowl tight end, was also a hybrid player that was really physical and smart. And he talked about going up against that tough 49ers defense in practices on the Raw Room podcast. Just listen to this.
Playing against Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Deshaun Golston, Dante Whitner, Carlos Rogers. I mean, the list goes on like
Golston was fucking knocking skulls.
Knocking cats out the hawk. That defense, man, really just playing against them, man. and learning their schemes, and because pretty much they ran every defense that you've seen so far, and then going against, like I said, Alden Smith, Ray McDonald, Ahmad Brooks,
Carlos
Justin
Rogers
Smith,
was there too, wasn't
Carlos Rogers. So
Auburn,
learning how to block against them guys, learning how to pick defenses up, man, it actually helped.
But in 2013, Delanie Walker was heading into free agency. He would have loved to stay with the 49ers because, as he said, he loved Jim Harbaugh as a coach. Look, I was able to pull up this quote from all those years ago. This was more than 10 years ago. But ultimately, he ended up on the Titans for the remainder of his career.
What was your experience like with him as the head man?
Best coach ever.
Oh, for real?
I love Jim. Jim, the reason why I was able to do what I did. Other coaches, when they wouldn't even put me on the field to be a fullback, just go lead block. Jim was like, you got so much talent. And he had coached me in the Las Vegas Bowl, so he knew exactly who I was. So at the end of the day, he was like, I need you to be pretty much a quarterback of this offense too, so I can play multiple positions.
Now, as a coach, I think that he has a very high ceiling for two reasons. Now, firstly, he was a 14-year NFL veteran who knows the intricacies of football and how to get away with certain things, and like the little small details that this coaching staff is very predicated on, those small details. He knows those small details of how to block and catch the football at multiple different positions. He was in the slot, he was an inline tight end, he was in the backfield, he was out wide, he was used all over the field for the 49ers with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, who he's going to be working with. Listen to him openly talk about how he would be able to get away with holding consistently.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I mean, I used to hold linebackers, man. They be so mad. Watch every film on me. I promise you, I'm holding them.
And then number two, why I think he could be a really good coach is because he played multiple different positions at the NFL level. So he has a multifaceted skill set and viewpoint of what it takes to succeed in the NFL as a player at several different positions on special teams as well as on offense. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was able to return kicks for touchdowns in the NFL as a tight end. It's just absurd. He was a 3-time Pro Bowl tight end, got 1,000 yards in 2015 with the Titans at the age of 31 years old. So he really just kind of like got better and better as the years went on in his career, which that also is a very good sign for him as a coach, because that means that the more he knew about the game, even though he was getting, less fast and not as strong, physically he's wearing down, the more he knew about the game, the more he was able to implement into his play and have more success. And now that I'm thinking about it, he probably learned a lot from Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, obviously, because, those were his coaches, but also Vernon Davis as well, because I was listening to him on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, and he was talking about Vernon. I really think it's just kind of like a match made in heaven, because he's got that connection to Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, but also reuniting with the other 49ers players that are now on this Chargers coaching staff as well. If he wants to be a full-time head coach, I would absolutely love that for the Chargers to bring him on as an offensive assistant, or maybe even tight ends coach, because right now our tight ends coach is Andy Biscoff, who he's like the run game coordinator, really. He kind of doubles as both tight end coach / run game coordinator right now. And so I would imagine that there's room to have at least a assistant tight ends coach or something like that. But really, I don't know. I don't think the title really matters, like assistant tight ends coach, offensive assistant, because really you can give him whatever title that you want and you can put him into whatever position that you want on this coaching staff. He already knows this offense in the general sense of things and has played multiple different positions within it, and he also has the savviness of an NFL veteran. We have tons of former players as coaches right now, like Nick Hardwick, Navarro Bowman. We all know those former players. Jim Harbaugh even was a former quarterback in the NFL. He played for the Chargers, but having a guy like Delanie Walker, I think, former tight end, 14-year player, 3-time Pro Bowl tight end, having him as the tight ends coach, it's just technically kind of open right now. It would do wonders for a guy like Zach Heins, who is an undrafted free agent. I think he could really benefit from a really good tight ends coach who used to play in the NFL, knows all those little details, help him out in his routes, help him out in his blocking technique, because he's got all that size and he's got some flashiness to him. I think that Delanie Walker, being a full-time head coach, would be really, really good, specifically for Zach Heins. So I really hope that this works out and Delanie Walker does end up on this coaching staff full time, because it would be great for undrafted free agent Zach Heins, but also he kind of knows all of this stuff that I talked about what Greg Roman is going to do on offense.